Had a little problem with the video camera. It would, and then it wouldn't, and it would, then it wouldn't. So I'm going to try again here. I've already got the side plates taken off of it and the spool out of it and whatnot before I realized there was a problem. So let's get back to it here. I'm soaking the parts in. This is basically a, where's it at? Right here. It's CRC 656, which is kind of like WD, but not exactly. Doesn't damage plastics. The only thing that I've taken off here are the 3 screws for the side plate, the left side plate, and I took off, of course, the right side plate, the set plate assembly. I haven't pulled that apart again. Took the spool out of it from the right side. Took the brake weights. These are the fly weights for the gas control. And I pulled the C-lock, which is in here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a C-lock down in there. That's for this gear right here. Okay, so all this stuff gets soaked. And as I said, see, that's supposed to be grease. Okay, look at that stuff, man. It's dry as a bone. So anyways, that's what I'm doing, is taking that out and cleaning it up. We've got a little piece in here. Let me get a hold of it. Get it out of there. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. It's just a little flat copper shim that is used to center the spool, and it's used to put the pressure on the spool shaft for your gas control. Clean off all the old grease with the CRC and a toothbrush. Some people use acetone. Acetone's okay. It's faster than the CRC, and acetone doesn't leave anything behind, but that's okay. I'm dealing with lubricants here that I don't mind if there's a little something left behind. I just want to get the old lubricants out of there. And when I say a little something, what I'm talking about is not impurities. This stuff is a lubricant, and it's an anti-corrosion coating, and yada 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 yada. Clean the old grease out of the gear. The level wind idler is what this is called. And I can't get to that real easily. Where's my little tool? Here we go. There it is. Piece of some hardened grease right there, man. 25 years old, baby. This is why I said we should do this. I tend to over lubricate these things. I don't. And you notice there wasn't a whole lot of grease in there. Well, that's because the factory doesn't over lubricate them either. People get crazy with the lubricants in these things and think that more is better. Well, unfortunately, more just tends to slow them down. So we don't really want more. We want the right amount of the right lubricant, and then there's just kind of sort of no issue. It looks pretty good. That looks pretty good down inside there. Okay, get rid of all that old grease and stuff. And I'll put a note in here just so that there's a note in there. Okay, are you ready for this? Here we go. C and L, and that would be, what is this? 1/26 maybe, I think it is, of 15. There you go, clean and lube, 1/26/15, and we get a little bit now. We're talking little bit. Okay, a little bit of grease on that. Blow this off. Okay, and puts that down on there with just a little bit of lubricant on things. It looks good. And this gets a little bit down inside there, and the shim goes back in there, and then a little bit goes on top of the shim for riding against the end of the spool shaft. A little bit goes a long, long way. Put a little bit on the gear, a little bit there, a little bit on the gear. It'll spread itself just as soon as things start turning in there, so you don't need to worry about, spreading the stuff. It'll do that all by itself. Come on, let me hear that snap. There we go. A little snap-a-rooney. And there we go. We put a little bit underneath. and put that in the underneath that C-clip. Alrighty then. So much for the left side plate. We're good to go. Spool. Spool is just a matter of wiping off the shaft, because that really is all there is to that. Make sure there's no old lubricant left on it. On the other end of the spool, we've got that level wind drive gear. Need to take the C-clip off of that, which is right there. Okay, got that. Gear can come off. Bushing comes off. And we wipe off the grease and whatnot here. And we throw that in the solvent, we throw that in the solvent. This can stay right where it is. That way I'll be sure to lose it. I have more in case I do. And that looks pretty nice actually. All the way around. So we clean the grease out of the, do the whole grease cleaning thing off of the level wind drive, the level wind pinion, this is what they call that. That sits over there. And we drag the brush through the inside the spool shaft support bushing. All this talk about bearings. Everything's got to have ball bearings. Well, you know, it's true that ball bearings, if they're put together properly anyway, have less rolling resistance than a bushing does. However, their clearances are much more critical. Bushings don't get all messed up. They last pretty much forever if you just keep a little oil on them every now and then. And I want you, see if I can do this, to look at the bearing surface where that bushing's been riding for however long it's been riding there for. Where am I? It's not there. Let's see here. Can't do this. Well, there it is. There it is. Okay, you should be able to see that. Damn, my hand's in the way now. Fairly clearly, I'm hoping. And on the other side, your bushing surfaces look pretty good as far as I'm concerned. I'm having a hell of a time with this mirror. Anyway, the object here being to try to get you to see what's going on inside your new reel. And I'm not having much success, but, well, that's just me. So, anyway, get that cleaned up. Drop this back over there. We put a little bit of pre-lube on the little oil there. Drop the bushing back over it. Set the spool shaft pinion back over it. Put the C washer back on it. We'll poke a hole in my fingers. There we go. Clip. Just snapped in place. Wipe the excess oil off of the inside of the spool. Not necessary. Just enough is all you need. More is not better. We can touch pinion gears with a little bit of grease. And it'll continue to spread on the drives. Okay, that's the really, at the moment anyway, the end of the discussion for the spool and left side plate. And we're coming down to level wind. Take off the level wind pawl cap. There's usually a shim inside there. We got to watch out for any shims. I don't see one. And there's nothing on the bottom of that, so apparently they decided they didn't need a spool shim in this. That's nice. And we kind of shake back and forth, and we get the pawl out. Let's take a hard look at the pawl. This is one of those critical components. I don't know how familiar with bait casting you are, but if the pawl is ugly, replace it, period. Because if you let it go, you're asking for a situation where your level wind carriage screw gets messed up. There's no fixing those. You have to replace them if they get chewed. So be sure that you are right with this. There's your pawl. There's one side of it, and there's the other side of it. Damn nice. We do not have a shim down inside here, and it's about as clean can be, so I'm going to set those off to the side. And we're going to motor on here to pull the level wind line guide and the carriage out. The only reason I have to do this is so that I get the line guide out. Okay, that takes us down to the frame is now naked, as naked needs to be. The cast control brake barrel in there is a molded in part, held in place. That's something that doesn't come out. Bushing, carriage guide, carriage tube, line guide, and it's a frame pin, it's a line guide, carrier pin, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't move, it just needs to be clean. Alrighty. Here's the line guide. And the line guide carrier? I don't know, they have a name for this thing. If I felt like it, I'd look it up. I don't remember what this is called exactly. And the bushing for the carriage screw, line guide carriage, worm screw, sometimes they call them worms. And the carriage screw. This is another one that requires some up close and personal inspection so that you're sure that there's no sand or junk in it. This is and it doesn't get greased on this one, by the way. It gets oil only because it does not disengage. Don't grease this thing. Oil it only. If you grease it, you won't be able to cast past the end of your nose because of the drag that it applies to the spool. Well, you'll go over past the end of your nose, but it'll be really difficult to cast. And you slide that off of there. That's the other bushing that forms the bearing for that. There's a piece of old nasty, harder than all get out grease on there that doesn't seem to want to come off. That's another reason some people use acetone. It is a far better solvent, but you know, you can't always tell if it's going to do something nasty to whatever it is you're using it on. And certain plastics just don't respond well to those kinds of chemicals. So I just sort of never use anything other than a decent oil and spend a little time cleaning things up, and then, well, there's just kind of sort of no real issue, is there? I don't have to worry about damaging components using a chemical that was intended to dissolve the grease, but then it started to dissolve the part. So yeah, it takes me longer to do this than some, but I don't have to call anybody up and say, gee whiz, man, Sorry about your luck, but your reel's trash because the part melted with the solvent, and well, you know, I can't buy that part. See, I just don't have those kinds of issues because, well, you know. Usually I get $40 for this, actually. But because this was an eBay listing and I'm selling something, I decided to do it as a little cheaper. Alright, let's get a close look at the level wind. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see it or not. But I gotta look at it anyways. Make sure we got all the junk out of it. Look for any sign of any wear, scraping, galling, etc., etc. You'll notice, where is it? Right there, no, right there. Bushing surface, there's no sign of any wear on that. We turn it around. That bushing surface, if you can see it, no sign of any wear on that. As I was talking about being a low mileage reel, I ain't kidding, man. I mean, it's, you know, it's a clean piece. Alrighty, let me blow all the dust off everything. Looking pretty good. Here we go. Okay, around the other way with that. See if it likes that a little bit better. I don't like that better, but it likes that better. And that's what matters. Yeah, there we go. And again, tiny little bit of lubricant right on that so that that C-clip has a little something to ride against. Doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit. Okay, it's got that. This pin goes back through here. We put the spring washer back in place. This is where things are going to get to be a little bit of a hassle, I'm thinking. Because that pin is not going to want to stay there. Yeah, it's going to do that. So, here we go. Snap. Gotta love that sound when it happens. Finally. Alright. Let's got that back in there. Take a little drop of oil, drop it in the wine guide. Drop the pawl back in there. Let's do it this way. Here we go. A little bit of finger pressure. Let's get it, there it goes. Flops in place. Take another hard look down in here. Make sure there's no... Yeah, things are looking good in there, man. Okay. A little drop of oil on top of it. That's plenty. Pawl cap goes back in place. Snug it up. Spin, 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 spin. No problem. Working like it should. Alrighty then. Drop of oil on the worm. Spin it a few times, spread that out. Alright. It's really about all there is to the frame itself. I'll just wipe the inside of the cast control barrel out. They're usually just dry, no oil, no nothing. The nylon or plastic, whatever they make those bushings out of, the brake weights, doing their thing. Alright, that's as much as we need to mess with here, which means this can go back together so that the gears go together. There we go, that's what I wanted. And back in with the side cover screws. Speaking of something, we could take a little touch of grease. That's way too much. A little touch of grease. And put it right down in there. There we go. Okay. Back that up so that you can hear the threads engage. That way you don't cross-thread things. If you just run them down in there, they tend to get cross-threaded. I'm going to loosen this one up a little bit. I just want these just snug, and then I'll kind of get things aligned as I go here. And make sure things are all going together in there, aligned properly. So you just take it a little bit at a time. You don't get them all snugged up at once. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. Nice and snug. Nice and snug. Nice and snug. Alright, that should be pretty even. Feels good. Slide the brake weights back on there. And, you know, if you don't have enough brake, take the spool out and turn these things around so that the bigger surface is pushing against the inside of the brake barrel. Okay, now where is the line on this thing? Well, no matter what I do with it, it's not going to be right. So we'll just feed it through, and I'll worry about getting things synchronized later. And I imagine you're going to want to put new line on it, so the synchronization really doesn't make a damn bit of difference, does it? Alright, we're driving the level line. So that's pretty much the end of left side cover, level wind. Now we get into the set plate. Wipe off the grease. We take the crank handle off. Bigger screwdriver, please. And a lock nut right there. We have what looks like about 11 millimeters there, maybe 10 and 11, just to keep it covered, because 11's too big. So 10 it is. Okay, spool nut, that in there. This is really not necessary. Notice we can't get the handle off. There's another C-lock here. Figures. There it is. Okay. We get that. Little teeny tiny. Damn. That goes in the parts washer. Alright, that's all of that. I'm just going to wipe off the crank handle. I don't want to soak it. It doesn't really need it in the first place. And secondly, it's just, well, don't want to get it down in there. Drag wave washer. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but this thing's really, pretty doggone clean as it is. Got nothing right there. Put that in there. Take out the drag system. I don't think there's anything else in there. This out. Pull the right side cover off. That looks good. We'll leave it alone. Pressure shims inside here. That don't where we go. And a cushion washer. These all just have oil on them. There we go. And that's it down in there. That's just oil. I don't see any signs of any grease at all. So I'll just wipe those off and motor on. And set plate then. We have those screws out. Set plate should pop off of there. There we go. Just got to lean on it just the right way and off it comes. Inside the side plate looks pretty good. Yoke springs. Ooh. Man, there's some old nasty dried up looking stuff. Main gear. Anti-reverse pawl. Why that didn't come off the main gear, I don't know yet. Now the drag washer, that's what I was looking for. It goes on the bottom of this stack. Clean those up separately. Drag washer. We're going to put the drag back together basically dry because, well, that's how it's supposed to be. Bottom drag washer, kicker and anti-reverse sprocket. Looks good. Put that in the solvent. Lift spring concave side down. Little thrust washer for the crankshaft. Old grease. Yoke and pinion. Or pardon me, yeah. Yoke and pinion goes in the wash there. Wow, man, there's some old grease in there, brother. More drag washers. It's got quite the stack, doesn't it? All right. Main gear goes down in the wash. Drag washers go down in the wash. That's the top one. We're going to leave these. I'm just going to kind of wipe them. We're going to leave them alone. Don't soak them in anything because, well, again, you don't know exactly what they made them out of or how it's going to respond to it. So, we don't do that. Wipe those off. All right. Now we've got set plate. I really don't need to take it apart any further than this because I can get to it with the solvents and blow everything out. What I want to know is how come this bushing doesn't want to come out of here. That bushing should come out of there. It's just a nice snug fit, which is a good thing. Credit to the machining. So since it doesn't really want to come out, I can turn it in there. That's pretty damn good. That's some close. That is some close tolerance right there. You won't find that in a lot of today's reels at really any price, unless you really get expensive, and then you want to move. Okay, well, I'm not going to mess with it. If it's in there that perfectly, I say leave it alone. Pick a little bit off of here and there. Old hard grease. So anyway, set plate's ready to go. Need to get some grease under things in there. Any place anything has to move, we can just go ahead and lay it in there. Base of the crankshaft down there. And that washer goes on it. And we put a little more on the top of that. And a little bit on the yoke posts. A little bit where the pinion gear rides in the yoke. Put the pinion back in the yoke. Set the yoke down on there. Get a little bit on the teeth of the kicker. A little bit on the bottom here, a little bit on the teeth, a little bit between here where it rides, where the pawl rides, Set the pawl in place. Set that down on there with the pawl in place. Let's make sure that it works. Okay. That's better. Gets a good grip on reality. Lower drag washer. Main gear. A little bit of grease on the main gear. That'll be plenty. That'll spread itself around just fine. Make sure that tick, tick, just like it's supposed to. Kicks in and out of gear. Spread that. Beautiful. Just lovely. Absolutely lovely. All right. We have drag washer. Clutch plate, drag washer, fixed clutch plate, friction washer, top pressure plate. Drag washer springs. Convexes are facing each other. Down on there. Pressure collar goes down on there. Mark this C&L 1/26/15. Alrighty then. We want to put a drop of oil right there so that that will work its way down in between. As a matter of fact, if we really want to get carried away, we can lift this up, put that drop of oil right down in there, and then set it all back together again. And now that's lubricated properly. Okay. outer side cover goes back on. Do a quick little clean up some of the outer components here just because I can get to them now. And back together we go. Guess maybe I ought to put the springs back on the yoke. What do you think? Minor detail? Yeah. A little bit of grease where they sit. A little bit of grease where they sit on the inside of the cover. And back in we go. In a minute. I'm going to put a little bit of grease underneath that release button just because I want to. I think I got it. Alright. 2 screws. Back them up. Snug them down nice and evenly. Get them good and snug. Bottomed out and snug. Beauty. All right. Inside of that looks pretty good. Got some old oil on this. We'll just kind of wipe those off. A little bit of grease on the bottom of it, a little bit of grease on the other bottom of it. Put that back in there. Wipe off this. A little touch of grease in the center. Put that down in there. Drop of oil in the whole ball of wax. Missed. There we go. I guess I forgot to do that. I'll fix that over here in a minute. And that is the end of that. This piece is the other spool shaft bushing. It's clean anyways. We'll drop a little oil on that and put it back in there. And then we screw this back on there, just kind of get it started because, well, that's spool shaft pressure and I don't want to make it tight. Next item, drag nut. There we go. That's some really fine machining, you know. And you can put something together. There's nothing holding it still. And yet. Alrighty. Pressure washer. Handle. We'll drop a little oil down in there and in there. We set the handle in place. And then that washer goes on there, a little tension washer, and here we go again with another one of these damn things. Little teeny tiny C-clip. There we go, I think. Nope. There we go. That's on there all the way. And we have spool nut and a 10mm, snug it up. Out of the way. There's plenty. And the spool nut lock. And a little piece of grease. We drop some oil right straight down in there. Blip, blip. And we drop a little oil on the spool shaft. And we put it on there the right way. Like so. And we snug it up. And we give those screws just a little tweak. If you're going to take these apart, please don't use a pair of pliers on those. Baby. And we take the slack. Just feel it. Oh yeah. We be looking good, man. You know, it's a beautiful thing when a plan comes together. Oh yeah. There you go. Ready to rock and roll, baby. Take it fishing. Add a little bit of drag to it. Drag feels good, baby. And like I said, you can, you can change the cash control in it, take those things out of there, put different ones in, turn them around, change your cash control. If it's not good enough, if it tends to backlash too much, you got to put too much pressure on the spool to keep that from happening. Take spool out, turn those brake rates around, put it back together, and it increases the area. Thank you very much.